Lady in the Lake opens with a narration by a woman named Cleo Johnson, who cites the fable of the lion and the hunter to explain that, until and unless the victim of an act of violence tells their end of the story, the perspective of the assailant is accepted as gospel. The narration seems to be coming from a letter addressed to one Maddie Morgenstern, and there's an undertone of anger directed towards Maddie because she has apparently used Cleo's story for her own benefit. The visual of this prologue shows Cleo's dead body being dumped into the lake, and it's followed by the title cards plastered over a scene of a guy in a mailbox costume, peeing in an alleyway that tell us that the show is going to take place in the 60s in Baltimore, and we're going to see the month-long lead up to the aforementioned death. So let's talk about the first episode of Lady in the Lake. Episode 1 shows the abduction of Tessie Durst as she gets separated from her mother and father at the Thanksgiving parade after she walks into a shop to buy a seahorse. Well, we don't see the actual abduction, but Tessie's interaction with a creepy-looking clerk is enough to tell the viewer what must have happened. The scene then cuts to Maddie buying a brisket, and since the meat is fresh, the blood leaks through the wrapping and ruins her dress. So she gets to the nearest clothing store to buy a new dress. And this is probably the first time that Maddie and Cleo cross paths, because Cleo is the model in the shop from where Maddie buys a dress. To be specific, Maddie buys the dress that Cleo was wearing while it is on display in the window of the shop. Some not-so-subtle racism happens at this moment, but Maddie seems to be in too much of a hurry to think about the skin color of the person who is wearing the dress that she has bought. The following moments are intercut between Maddie attending a Jewish event with her family and Cleo attending an event for black women with her friend, Dora Carter. Cleo tries to chime in on Myrtle's comments about educating black children instead of allowing them to get embroiled in gang-related jobs, but she is immediately shut down by Shell Gordon's men because Cleo actually works for Gordon, who is the owner of a bar who runs several illegal side businesses. Maddie's speech at the event she is attending is derailed by the revelation of Tessie's disappearance and how there's going to be a search party for her. By the way, given how Maddie's half of this segment of the episode is prefaced by some statements about the weakening of the Black-Jewish alliance by the Nation of Islam rhetoric of Black Power in order to make some comment on anti-Semitism, I have to point out the climate this show is coming out in. I don't think it's totally random that the show is reminding people of the time when the United States of America was anti-Semitic, when there is a wave of Zionism sweeping across present-day America. You are free to watch this show in some kind of a vacuum, but I'd advise you not to. Anyway, coming back to the plot, the rest of Cleo's Thanksgiving is ruined by the fact that her husband, Slappy, has done a horrible job of looking after their two sons, Teddy and Lionel. As for Maddie's Thanksgiving dinner, it's ruined by Milton, as he gets unnecessarily angry after learning from Wallace White that Maddie was in a relationship with Alan Durst, the father of the girl who has disappeared, back when they were in high school. Cleo leaves her children at her mother's place because she works at the clothes shop during the day and at Gordon's bar at night. She hopes to be hired by Myrtle soon, and then she'll be able to earn enough money from one job and look after both of her children properly, especially Lionel, because he is apparently suffering from sickle cell anemia. In this scene, we get a little idea about Cleo's beliefs and her dynamic with her family. She is probably an atheist, and that's why she thinks Lionel's sickness has to be dealt with in a scientific fashion, and she doesn't want to listen to her mother and take him to some religious guru. Cleo's father left a huge debt on the family's head before dying, and it was probably paid off by Cleo's uncle, Isaiah, and he doesn't miss a chance to remind the family about it. And that is probably motivating Cleo to work extra hard and get all her secondary family members off her back. Milton gets predictably insecure about Maddie's history with Alan Durst. He probably thinks that Maddie's obsession with finding Tessie is a sign that she is still in love with Alan, or something like that. So he decides to punish Maddie by destroying the brisket. This causes Maddie to flip out, and Milton somehow tries to make it seem like she is the one overreacting in this situation. That ends up being the final straw, and Maddie decides to leave the house while Milton continues to act like he doesn't know what he has done to elicit such a reaction from his wife. She packs her bags and goes straight to a pawn shop to get some money that'll keep her afloat for the time being. Weinstein, the pawn shop owner, tells his daughter Judith to take Maddie to a flat that they own so that she has a place to stay until she sorts her life out. We see how Cleo functions at the bar and hotel owned by Shell Gordon. The employees over there ask Cleo about insurance and all the money-related stuff that she handles. Dora is in a relationship with a man called Reggie, who is the guy who was in the fish shop from where Tessie was abducted. Dora is the star singer at Gordon's club. Reggie seems to be the head of security at Gordon's place, and Cleo manages both of them. In addition to all that, Cleo handles the bar, which is where we meet police officer Ferdy Platt, who hints that law enforcement authorities are looking for a guy whose appearance matches that of Reggie. Since Reggie had bought the fish from the aforementioned fish shop, from where Tessie was abducted, he immediately rushed to drown it in the toilet, which then began to overflow due to clogging. However, he doesn't have the time to tend to that, as he has to get a severely drugged-out Dora onto the stage. Meanwhile, Cleo goes to Gordon to butter him up so that Slappy, who is a struggling stand-up comedian, gets to perform a set and earn some money. Gordon allows Slappy to enter his bar, but he also reprimands Cleo for supporting Myrtle while working for him. Maddie is a little taken aback when she finds out that the house that Judith has arranged for her is in an all-black neighborhood, but she doesn't dwell on that for too long as she rushes out into the woods to look for Tessie. As Maddie and Judith approach the lake, they find Tessie's lifeless body there. Maddie breaks down as if she has lost her own child, and to be honest, I do think that Tessie is Maddie's child. Maybe there's more to her affair with Durst than Maddie is revealing at the moment. Maybe Maddie had Tessie with Alan out of wedlock, and Alan and his wife decided to raise her as their own, while Maddie formed her family with Milton. Well, by the looks of it, these decisions have taken a horrible turn, and it'll lead to the unraveling of Maddie's life as well as that of the Dursts. Episode 2 opens with a flashback to Maddie's school days when she was dating Alan. Maddie intends to interview Alan's mother, Louise, about her artwork. It doesn't go too well because Maddie is too inexperienced to go toe-to-toe with Louise. On top of that, Louise is quite apprehensive about Maddie's relationship with Alan, so she isn't really interested in giving any good answers to Maddie. The awkward moment is saved by a phone call, and Hal Durst, Alan's father, enters the scene to have a conversation with Maddie. Now, based on Hal's tone as well as the painting of what seems to be a naked Maddie lying in a lake, I think the man is a creep. Coming to the plot that's unfolding in the 60s, Maddie and Judith are taken away for questioning regarding the discovery of Tessie's body by an anti-Semitic cop, and then later dropped off at the home that Judith has arranged for Maddie. The following day, Maddie attends Tessie's funeral, where Tessie's mother breaks down while holding on to Maddie. The abductor's mother watches all this from afar and goes home to beat the living hell out of her son. Based on the abductor's actions and the mother's words, it seems like the guy is mentally unstable and Tessie isn't his first victim. While dropping off Dora in her room, Cleo learns that there was a time when Gordon funded Myrtle's political campaigns. Since Cleo thinks that Myrtle is the antithesis of Gordon and that she is going to clean the streets that have been dirtied by Gordon and his illegal businesses, she isn't able to digest this piece of information. But one look through the record books in Gordon's establishment confirms Dora's allegation. Myrtle did take donations from Gordon in the past. Cleo gets drunk and arrives at Myrtle's office. Initially, Myrtle praises Cleo's speech from the other day about educating black kids, and then she proceeds to dash Cleo's hopes and dreams about working with her. The politician points out Cleo's ties to Gordon while downplaying her own connection with Gordon and paints it as the reason why she can't be hired. Myrtle specifically points out that her white donors won't be happy with Cleo's presence because of her connection to Gordon, thereby proving that Myrtle's establishment is black on the outside and white on the inside. Anyway, this causes Cleo to lash out during an interview for Myrtle's campaign, and that seems to be the last time she's going to step into Myrtle's office. She goes to Gordon's place and tells him that she's going to widen the horizons of her duties at his place instead of two-timing with Myrtle. As a reward for Cleo's dedication, Gordon says that Slappy will get to play a set at his place, and Slappy, after some initial skepticism, is glad when he finds out what Cleo has done for him. Cleo's recent arrangement with Gordon doesn't dissuade her from keeping a check on her older son Teddy, who has a tendency to work for Gordon's men. Since Milton won't give Maddie any money and all the jewelry and trinkets aren't enough to keep her afloat, she stages a burglary. Officer Platt and Officer Davis attend to her needs. While Davis goes around the neighborhood to see if anybody knows anything about the aforementioned burglary, Platt surveys the flat in which Maddie has been living. It doesn't take too much time for Platt to figure out that there was no burglary, and it's merely a cry for help. So, he takes her to the diner from where she had made that 911 call, and he gives her a little inside information about the investigation into Tessie's death. He says that, initially, Maddie and Judith were the prime suspects, But eventually, the police's focus shifted to the real suspect, the owner of the fish shop from where Tessie was abducted. The knowledge that Tessie's kidnapper is about to be arrested causes Maddie to relax, and Platt uses this opportunity to point out the fact that she has faked the burglary to get the insurance claim on her ring, which she claims has been stolen. Even though her bluff has been called, Maddie refuses to admit the truth and keeps pretending that the burglary was real and her ring needs to be found. Later that night, Bob Bauer arrives at Maddie's house to get some sound bites about her association with Tessie's death, and Maddie doesn't spend a lot of time before throwing him out. That said, before throwing him out, Maddie points out that Bob should focus on the abductor who is about to be caught instead of creating fake stories about Maddie's involvement in Tessie's death. Speaking of the abductor, he is found torturing his mother in his store. The police are forced to open fire, and that prompts the abductor to free his mother and surrender. The abductor keeps hallucinating about Tessie and acts erratically, thereby confirming that he isn't of sound mind. That's the last we see of this guy in this episode. We'll have to wait for the next few episodes to arrive to learn more about what he did to Tessie and what the motivation behind his criminal activities was. When Reggie gives an envelope full of cash to Officer Davis, it is revealed that the captain of the Baltimore police is in Gordon's pocket. As a sign of the goodwill between their bosses, Davis tells Reggie to lay low because the police are searching for someone who matches Reggie's facial description, especially the black eye he has received from an underground boxing match. So, instead of going for his next job, Reggie tells Cleo to go for a drop in his stead. After bidding goodbye to Slappy, who delivers a great performance, Cleo heads out. We get a glimpse of Platt hooking up with Maddie, and then we return to Cleo, handing over the aforementioned envelope of money to a gangster who loves birds. Cleo learns that the money is for the assassination of Myrtle Summer, and she tries to get out of this sticky situation because she doesn't want to have a hand in the death of such an influential person. However, the criminals give her the duty of driving them to their destination and then helping them escape from there. The gangsters shoot up Myrtle's place, and Myrtle's husband shoots back. Amidst all this chaos, Cleo makes a run for it. Now I've got to clarify two things. Firstly, it's unclear if Myrtle is dead. Even though we see the gangsters shooting inside Myrtle's house, we don't see her dead body. So, there's no way to surely say that Myrtle is dead. And secondly, it seems like this is Cleo's last night as a free person. After this, she is either going to die because we see her dead body in the same blue jacket that she was wearing on the night of the shootout, or she is going to be abducted by the gangsters who did make it out of the shootout alive and then killed later on. Either way, things look bleak for Cleo, and it'll be interesting to see how her arc is stretched over the course.